right, guys, are there any questions on any of the assignments thus far? So we've only had 2 assignments so far. Any questions on either one of those? '21. So they gave us a triangle for number 21, and they told us it is a right triangle. Now, one of the angles is 6x plus 7, and the other angle is 11x minus 2. Now, since we know it's a right triangle, the 2 other acute angles are going to add together to be 90. So we can say 6x plus 7 plus 11x minus 2 is equal to 90. Now, we could have added all 3 angles together and set it equal to 180 and solved that way, and it would give us the same value. Well, 6x plus 11x is 17x. 7 minus 2 is going to be plus 5 is equal to 90. At this point here, we can subtract 5 from both sides, telling us 17x is equal to 85. At this point here, we can divide both sides by 17, and it'll tell us x is equal to 5. Now, yes, because if we look back at the instructions, it says find the measure of each acute angle. It didn't want us just to find x. We do have to plug it back in. So we'll do 6 times 5 plus 7. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 7 is 35. We can do the same thing with 11 times 5 minus 2. 11 times 5 is 55. Minus 2, make sure, no, that's why. Because 30 plus 7 is not going to be 37, and this is going to be 53. So our 2 answers are 53 and 37. Any other questions on the assignment? Okay. Number 17? 21.
Can we do, no, 17 is 17. 17 is, yeah.
There we go. So we have a figure that looks like this here. They told us that this angle is 3x plus 6. This angle here is 2x plus 18. And our other angle up here is 24. Now, the exterior angle theorem states that the exterior angle, which in this case is 3x plus 6, is equal to the sum of the alternate 2 interior angles. Well, the alternate 2 interior angles would be these 2 here.
So 24 plus.
Yeah, so we could say 24 plus 2x plus 18, or 2x plus 18 plus 24.
The part, I don't know if I was
Thank you.
wrong, but when I was doing it, I would like, when I would get to the part where it would just have like the 2
So,
numbers on the other side of the equal sign, and they would just have like the x.
so you got 42. So you got to this here.
Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Huh?
So we got to this here.
Yeah.
So at this point here, we can subtract 2x from both sides.
And then
3x minus 2x is x plus 6 is equal to 42.
oh yeah, I was doing it way wrong then. I was like all over the place. I was stressing.
So the value of x is,
36.
now it asks for the measure of the exterior angle. So here we're going to do 3 times 36 plus 6. Well, 3 times 36 is going to be 108 plus 6 should be 114. Six, 8, carry the 1, 9, yep, 114. All right, guys. what we're looking at today, the first thing we're looking at today is corresponding angles and sides. So the corresponding angles in two congruent triangles are going to be congruent. They're going to match up. They are congruent. And our corresponding sides, the sides that match up, are going to be congruent. And one of the ways that the figures show us this is by having the same number of marks. So here inside the angle, if they have a single mark, it means those two are congruent. If they have two, then those two are congruent. If they have three, then those two are congruent. The same with sides. If it has one mark on the sides, it means those two sides are congruent. If they have two, then those two are congruent, and so on with three. And then we can set up these congruency statements saying that those parts are congruent. And the way that we can do a congruency statement saying that the two figures are congruent is we start off with naming the first one. Now with triangles, we'll make a triangle. Now looking at this first one here, what is a way that we can name this first triangle? Because we'll name it by the vertices, so we can say ABC. We could say CBA. We can do BAC or BCA. It doesn't matter how we name the first one. But we can say that this triangle is congruent to triangle. Well, what letter did we start off with the first one? A. What angle is A congruent to? A is congruent to D. Because our second congruency statement, second part of the congruency statement has to match. Since I started with A, I'm going to have to start with angle D. Now the next letter we went to was, what angle is congruent to B? So the next one on the other statement has to be E, and the last one has to be F. Our congruency statements are going to follow the same path. Questions on this here? We good with this here? So for this here, we want to write a congruency statement for the triangles. Identify all pairs of corresponding parts. So if we write the congruency statement, because it's a triangle, we'll do a triangle. If it's a four-sided figure, we can just name the letters. We don't have to put a figure with a four-sided figure. Triangle. So pick one of these in JKL. Because the way we name the first one really doesn't matter. It just matters that the second one follows the same path. So we started out with point J. Exactly. We're going to start off with T. So for this here, we went J. Angle with 1 to the angle with 3 to the angle with 1. So here we go 2, 3, 1. So T, S, R. So it doesn't matter how we do the first one as long as the second one matches the same root. Questions on this here? Now there's something nice with the corresponding, once we get this, because again, we have to identify all the corresponding parts, so we're not done. So we're still on this question here. All corresponding parts. So how many corresponding angles do we have? 3. How many corresponding sides do we have? Now, what's nice is this statement here. If you can get this, it gives you everything else. Because again, these two statements had to match up, yes? So what letter went first? So angle J is going to be congruent to what? Because they match, yes? We could also say angle K is congruent to. And lastly, angle L is congruent to angle. Because again, they matched up, yes? Now we need to do the sides, but again, we could look at the figure. We could have done that with the angles, yes? Now what were our first two letters in the first statement? So we could say line segment JK is congruent to, or the first two in the next one? And if we look over here, JK has 1, TS has, but again, these follow the same path.
So LK is congruent to R.
So KL SR, because those are the next two letters, aren't they? Because again, it's following the same path, which means the last two have to be is congruent to RT or TR. And that's it. So if it asks for all the corresponding parts, all the congruent parts, we need all three sets of angles, all three sets of sides for triangles. For the congruency statement, we need the congruency statement on top. So there are 7 parts to this. Questions on this here? We ready for the next one? All right, let's do this again. So what are our two? So what is our congruency statement? Triangle what? MNP is congruent to triangle. So M, we started with 2, so Y, N, X, Z. Is angle M is congruent to angle Y.
Y. Every time I draw that angle, I draw it as an L.
How about angle N would be congruent to angle?
X.
Angle P is congruent to angle. Yeah, it takes a while to get used to drawing those. What's a side length that we can start with? MN is going to be congruent to YX.
P is going to be congruent to ZX.
So NP, ZX, yes. And?
X, Y, Z. Oh, we already did that one.
So MP
ZY.
and ZY. That's it. Over the top of it? That's just how I write it. Yeah. I just write it like that. I also do T's with a little bit of a curl at the bottom. Yeah. That's mainly because if we start using T, especially in equations, it looks the same as a plus sign. Yep. All right, guys, let's look at this one here. In the diagram, DEF is congruent to SPQR. And SPQR, we're not talking about the Roman legion. We're talking about this shape here. So for this here, we want to find the value of X and we want to find the value of Y. Now again, the way they wrote the statement does help us because what that tells us, so DEFG, so they started with D, and SPQR. So that means that angle S and angle D are the same. Well, then they went to E, and then this one went to P and E are congruent. Well, we know that angle F and angle Q are the same, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know those are the same. Well, that tells us that Q and F are the same, yes? So we know that 6y plus x is 84 degrees, yes? So, yes. So it's 68. In Algebra 1, in pretty much every math that you've had so far, how many variables did we solve for at the same time? Just one. I mean, we had some, you had some last year in Algebra 1 where you did solve for 2, but you had to find the value of one of the variables first, and then you could find the other. We couldn't solve for 2 at the same time. So there's no real way we can solve for X and Y at the same time. Because the amount of numbers that we could have for X and Y that give us 84, there's a lot. Because it's going to need us to find either X or Y first. Let's see what else we have. QR. Because so here 6y plus x is congruent to, so 3, so G. Let's make sure. Yes. It should be F, thank you. Because I got looking at the figure. Thank you. Yep. Because 1, so D, E, so Q is where we were at. Q was the third, so it should be F, which is 68. Thank you. Because I would have messed all the numbers up at the very end. Any other questions on this here? Now, this side here, QR, what does it match up with? FG or GF, yes? And what's GF's measure? So what do we know about 2x minus 4? So we can set 2x minus 4 equal to, well, this one here has only one variable. So possibly. So what we can do first is add 4 to both sides. And if we add 4 to both sides, we get that. 2x is equal to. And then what do we do? We divide both sides by 2. Minus x is equal to. Now that we have the value of x, we can solve for the value of y. So we can set 6y plus, well, we know x is 8 is equal to. So now we can subtract 8 from both sides, which tells us that 6y is equal to. Divide both sides by 6, telling us and that's it. Questions on this here? So part A was find the value of x. We did. It's 8. Part B is find the value of y. We did. It's 10. We're done with this one. Yeah. Questions on this here? So we have another one here. They want us to find the value of x and y. So we can match this up here. So angle D and angle Q match up. E and M, which means N and F. And lastly, 2, 3, 4, G and P. Now that does tell us that 3x plus 2y is what? This time it is 84, unlike last time. But we also know what? X minus 2 is? Because it's between 1 and 2. So that should be 2. So it should be here. Sorry. So this is 8, yes? So we need to solve for the value of x here, yes? So we would. Which tells us x is. Then we can plug it back in. We can say 3 times 10 plus 2y is 84. Well, 3 times 10 is 30. And then what can we do? Minus 30 from both sides, which tells us that 2y is divide both sides by 2. 44 would be 22. Any questions on any of this here? I do that just to kind of keep the numbers organized. Any questions on any of this here? We good with this here? In the diagram, identify all pairs of congruent parts. So angle A is congruent to what? Angle C. Because A and D do have a 90-degree angle, but according to the statement, A and C match up. Then we can say angle B is congruent to angle D. Then angle G is congruent to angle E. And angle H is congruent to, and again, all I'm doing is looking at the statement, because the statement will match up to what we have. So A went first, C went first, so they're congruent. B went second, angle D went second, so they're congruent. G is third, so the third letter is E. They're congruent. H and F would match up. But they match up like that. The same thing is true with our sides, because all this is it's mapping, or we're walking around the figure, yes? Because if we look at the first one, because it's going A to B to G to H, and then we go back to A, yes? So the first two letters, bless you, in this here is from A to, so we're going from A, B are the first two, yes? Is congruent. What are our first two here? And they match up. The next two would be B, and the next two in the statement is? Then our next two is G, H, GH, and EF, yes? Because we're just going around the figure. Do we have another letter after H? H, A, because it comes back full circle. Because we could actually draw this out. So AB would be 1, and it's matching up with CD. Then BG and UD. Well, we do. But that means it leaves AH is congruent to FC or CF. Because the last one is just coming back around from the start. So those are all of our corresponding parts, yes? So that takes care of part 1. So here we have angle H, yes? What angle is H congruent to? So we're saying 4x plus 5 is equal to? Which we can solve for.
Is that a 5 or an 8? No, it's 5.
5. Divide by? Because we identified all the pairs of congruent corresponding parts, yes? And we found the value of x. So those are the only two things it asks for, yes? Questions on any of this here? We're not going to worry about showing that. We're going to move on. Properties of triangle congruence. Triangle congruence is reflective, symmetric, and transitive. So we can say a triangle is congruent to itself. We can also say that triangle ABC is congruent to DEF, and triangle DEF is congruent to ABC. And we can also say that if ABC, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, and DEF, triangle DEF is congruent to triangle JKL, then ABC is congruent to triangle JKL. If 1 is congruent to 2, 2 is congruent to 3, then 1 is congruent to 3. This isn't anything new. We're just applying it to triangles. Now this here, the third angle theorem. Well, so third angle theorem. So we know that the sum of any three angles in a triangle is 180, yes? Now the third angle theorem states if two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in another, well, the third angles must be congruent because they both add up to be 180, and if these two are already the same, these two are the same, then these have to be the same. Questions on this here? So, looking at this here, now for some of these, especially this here, it might be easier to redraw the figures to make them easier to see, because it's kind of hard to tell when they're drawn on top of each other. So what we can do is draw two triangles out. So we have A, C, D. And we also have C, D, B. Now in the figure, we have this angle A is 45 degrees. They don't tell us what B is, but they do put a single mark inside the angle. Now looking at the bottom, over here, this one has 2, and this one has 2, and it is 30. Find the measure of angle BDC. So BD. So this is the one that we want to find, yes? Now on that triangle, they really didn't give us any angles, but they told us that the one with 2 is 30. So this is 30. We also know that this is 45. But according to the last theorem, if two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in the other, then the thirds must be. So this angle here and this angle here should be the. So exactly, if we had 30 and 45 together, what do we get? And if we subtract 75 from 180, we get 105. So this angle over here is 105, which means our angle we wanted to find is.
So all it is just find
Mm-hmm. Because on some of these here, it's easier if we pull the two triangles apart from each other and look at them that way. It makes the problem easier to work. Any questions on this here? We good with this here? Angle P, this is the one we want to find. Well, we know that R and Q, so Q is 90, R is our mark. So R is 52, Q is 90, but we know that P and angle P are going to be the same. Since it's a right triangle, it means our two other angles, P and R, actually add up to be what? 90, yes? What's 90 minus 52? Because this would be an 8, 10, 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 minus 5 is? The sum of the acute angles in a right triangle add together to be 90. Yes. And that's the right way to do it.
Why did you think about it like that?
Any other questions on this here? Do we feel good about these here? Okay. It's not that I didn't staple these on here. Yes. I meant to put these on here, but again, this is the first year I did these. So when I ran the copies, I ran them all off at once, just took all the pack note sheets down there, got them run off, and then realized when I was getting London's assignments together, when I went to circle all the answers, I realized these weren't included. Yes, because the only other option that I had was have one of my aides staple, put another staple in these, and then hand them out. So I think I probably put one too many. No. You're welcome. 3 through 10, 13, 14. Yep, so 3 and 4, identify all pairs of corresponding parts. Then write another congruency statement for the polygon. Don't write the one they gave you. You gotta write a different one. Copy and complete the statement. So you gotta say which angles are equal, what the values are. 9 and 10, find the value of x and y. 13 and 14, find the measure of angle 1.